Hardcore Lies.
Georgia here with you, aka VHS82 apostrophe, your regular Wednesday evening host here at Body Bags. It is October, and very un-October-like, bring you David Lynch's Dune from 1984. I was thinking, I'm 300 plus reviews into my time at Body Bags. I think I can review just about anything I want. So seems like a bit of a weird, but there's enough mix in here. Like it's a space opera. It's there are some horror elements in here, or maybe in the sense of ultra weird, especially in this edition from David Lynch. When it comes to the Baron and some of the things that he does is really, really weird. But in the light of Star Wars, it's free fall. Dune has landed in my lap, and I'm a newcomer, and so I do not know everything there is to know about Dune. In fact, I remember years ago, a long time ago, I tried to give this a watch, and it just did not work. I bailed quick. I didn't know what I was getting into. Things change over time, right? And with Dune Part 1, I didn't go to the theater to see it, even though I should have. Caught it way after the fact as Dune 2 was coming and all the hype that was coming with it. And I even, unfortunately, missed that one in the theater. But I've got both now, seen both, and that was my segue into a much larger world by Frank Herbert, who first gave this 1965, the book, which ultimately is where I'm being, I was going to say dragged, not really, in a good way. I'm being pulled to the original source material. Eventually, I'm going to tackle that thing. But Dune Part 1, Part 2 really was my segue into even revisiting this one. And there is a lot to like here. I know when it first came out, it underperformed at the box office. I think it only brought in like 30 mil or whatever, and the budget was like 42 mil or something like that. And it just didn't go over well. Even with critics, I read Roger Ebert's review of this, and he absolutely tore it up to pieces. I'm like 5-10 minutes in. Now this is a long time between seeing it originally or at least trying to, and seeing it now. I'm like, we're not watching the same movie here, buddy. What's going on here? My approach to this, and I think what really helped was Dune Part 1, Part 2 is really helped. I am I'm new to this world, but I'm soaking it up and soaking it in, and I hope my comments on it become much more clear towards the end of the month as I'll look at Dune Part 1, Part 2. So, suffice it to say, Dune, at its heart, really, from an amateur perspective, point of view, really what you have is this. You have an emperor. You have moving pieces, right? You have the emperor who is like in charge of the entire galaxy thing, right? You've got houses which serve as ruling families. You've got a space guild, trading guild, right? That is sort of the glue maybe to all of these planets. And what propels the space guild is, of course, and there that goes. What propels them is spice, in terms of its ability to allow them to fold space in a way that you can travel from point A to point B without ever really leaving. You're there. I think that's explained fairly well in that movie Event Horizon, actually, which is interesting. So you got the Emperor, you got the Space Guild, you've got varying ruling families. The ones at the forefront of this story are the House of Atreides and the House of Harkonnen. Harkonnen presently is the stewards of Arrakis. Arrakis is a desert planet with a mysterious past, we think, which is the bearer of this spice, which generates and allows for not just space travel, but it also, and there you go, trade, which enlarges the guild, which you wonder, you get to the point early on you wonder who really is pulling the strings here, ultimately. And that allows, and this Dune 84 allows for some interesting aesthetics, which I don't know how much is from the book, not from the book. I know some is in here that's not in the Dune Part 1, Part 2. Feels like maybe this one borrowed a little bit from Messiah at the end without really knowing much about a Messiah, except that it's in production, or it will be soon, as the next film. But I'm learning, right? And so you got Arrakis is the source of the spice. Atreides, Harkonnen, the two families. The Emperor, who is in fear of the house of Atreides, Duke Leto, who is the ruling duke of that house. He decides to supplant the house of Harkonnen, remove them from Arrakis. Basically, it's a humiliating gesture. They're enemies, rivals of sorts, right? And he gives control over to Atreides. But this is all to set up a war in order to wipe out the house of Atreides, restore rulership to Harkonnen, and therefore, as Emperor, regain a sense of masterful control over the big picture. In this adaptation, though, we're met with the leader of the guild, who is you've seen this aesthetically, you've seen this done before in other movies. I don't know, like maybe Tobe Hooper's Invaders from Mars, Starship Troopers. He's just this sort of like enlarged head alien entity of sorts who is travels in this mode, this vehicle, or this thing of sort, right? And you see at the very beginning of this where the leader of the guild wants information from the Emperor. You get the feeling that he's this creature entity is the only one that basically can, show up at the Emperor's doorstep and say, what gives? And, the Emperor has to respond, and does, and basically tells him, look, I'm kind of setting all this into motion, and in the end, we're all going to be winners. There's nothing to fear. Well, there is something to fear, because you have Duke Leto's wife she has had a child. Now, she was supposed to have a daughter who was supposed to marry someone from the House of Harkonnen to, bring the houses together, to bring peace and to avoid any future war between the two, if I got it right. Glenn can tell me. And as a result of her having, now there's another moving piece I didn't mention, that is the House of Witches. We'll call them that, right? The Gesserit, the House of Witches. That sounds cool. And so it is a tight-knit group who basically behind the scenes, they really try to act as the pullers of the strings, right? You got a few players, the Emperor, the head of the guild, and these witches, and they all seem like they're the ones pulling the strings in this universe, trying to get the advantage over the other, right? And the witches have this sense of being able to do things in such a way that it gives them an advantage over others. Now they are at work trying to, through selective breeding, breed a super being, a mental super being of sorts. This is the Messiah figure of the freemen who live on Arrakis, the desert world, the holders of the spice. And when you have the House of Atreides given stewardship over Arrakis, there is already pre-planned an assassination attempt, right? Which will take out the Duke, Leto, and ultimately the point is also to kill the son and kill the mother. In all of this, will Paul and his mother escape with some help? Paul, though, as a result of being born a boy, has surpassed the Reverend Mother, who's in charge of those Witch Coven group, has surpassed her wildest imagination in terms of his giftings and abilities, and a man should not be able to do these things, and well, he can. And this particular movie, though, it comes after things that's just a little bit different, be it setting up in the beginning and some of the dialogue, filling us in a little bit easy. And, having seen Dune Part 1 and Part 2, it really set me up nice for this, in the sense of being able to take it in and understand kind of the bigger picture a little bit, even if it's still a glass darkly, a little fuzzy. A little bit of understanding here of what's going on. You get, the whole guild leader thing at the beginning. Paul's dreams of Chani is different in this one. And again, I don't know how the two major pieces, this and Part 1, Part 2, mesh with the book. I think if I'm right, Part 1, Part 2 mesh better in terms of the scope of the book. This one had to cram a lot in, 2 hours, 17 minutes, I think it was. 2 hours, 17 minutes. But towards the very end, as things are being resolved, you kind of almost get this weird sense that they've tapped just a little bit into Messiah to give us a glimpse that all things will ultimately maybe find some better resolution of sorts. The prophecies of Arrakis and their search of being a water world again, filled with oceans and rain and water and not deserts, which makes you wonder, what does that mean for the worms? I don't know. That's probably an obvious point to many out there. So this version matching up with Dune Part 1, Part 2, it was an interesting, I think there was a couple things that caught me that were really pleasant surprises on this. And I really hope I haven't lost anyone in any of this because I'm so new to this. Let's start with the director, David Lynch, best known for Eraserhead, The Elephant Man, Blue Velvet, 6 episodes of Twin Peaks, and as well, Twin Peaks Fire Walk With Me. So you kind of got a director with a really sort of weird aesthetic, I guess, or way of imagining things in a good way. The cinematographer, Freddie Francis, known for Cape Fear, Glory, Helen Korea. I mean, really has an interesting eye for showing us the visuals of things. The score, Toto. You would have never convinced me that Toto composed much of the score to this film. And it's pretty darn good, actually. We ought to ask bands to compose more often. I joke often about, it's too bad this horror movie didn't get Metallica to do a composition of sorts for the film. And here you got Toto doing it. And of course, you've got Queen having done it a few times. In terms of special effects, it's such a huge international cast that they were able, within that 40 to 42 million budget. But one of the standouts of this, two standouts to this crew, Leonardo de Rossi, of course, we know him from Lucio Fulci's Zombie, good chunk of the Gates of Hell trilogy, High Tension of recent, and Carlo Rambaldi, Alien, Close Encounters, Deep Red, Bay of Blood, a lot of things there. So those are just two in a huge international school of talent that have been brought to bear in this project. Now remember, this is 1984, so their approach to when the assassination on Paul is taking place, how that is approached and how it's approached in Dune Part 1, of course, are two different ways. In 1984, you got to approach certain scenes from the book in certain ways, and how you can go about in doing it in the most believable way. Another obvious one that jumped out is the force field effect, much different in the new movies, but they probably couldn't have done that back in 84. And so how they go about it really isn't as awkward as you would think at first seeing it. It actually kind of works. It's interesting. The producer, the great Dino De Laurentiis, and his company, of course, are behind this. Universal. This is a Universal release. A lot of good things about this, driving this. The last thing I might want to mention is the cast. I could spend the next hour talking about the cast. I'm just going to go names, okay? I mean, Kyle MacLachlan, is that how you say it? MacLachlan, the star of Twin Peaks. is Paul. Jürgen Prochnow, Duke Leto, of course, I know him as the captain of the U-boat, Das Boot. Love that guy. Richard Jordan is Duncan, Idaho. Paul L. Smith is the Beast Raven. Kenneth McMillan, Baron Vladimir Harkonnen. José Ferrer as the Emperor. But then you got Dean Stockwell in here. You got Max von Sydow. You got Brad Dourif. You've got Patrick Stewart. I mean, the cast is unreal. Oh, and I didn't even mention Sting. Sting is in this, and he's actually so much fun to look at. To just take in his facial expressions. I don't know, man. He loves the camera. The camera loves him. He's just got this weird sense of just when he starts to come alive, man, he just takes ownership of the entire room that he is in. He is amazing. I don't know how many things, I should have looked it up. I don't know how many things he actually has done. But man, he had a weird sense of, I don't know. It just really was a lot of fun to look at. I don't know if I mentioned it, but space not only drives, of course, the international space travel, the Space Guild, but also extends life. It also expands consciousness. This spice is like, it is the most valuable commodity in the known universe. This is what drives everything. And so ultimately, who controls it is in a pretty good spot. And the Harkonnen, when they're momentarily displaced by the House of Atreides, but for much darker, sinister reasons. It's one of the things, you didn't really see it in this one as much as you saw it in part 1, part 2, but one of the comments I often made watching it is, I don't know if I had ever seen so much backstabbing in one movie as I saw in part 1 and part 2. And so again, I don't know how much of this is, source material out of the book, between now and the time that I actually get a chance to look at or review Dune Part 1. I plan on doing a lot more reading and hopefully have a better sense of some of this and maybe compare up, who was Paul there, who was Paul here, the Duke there, the Duke here, the Baron there, the Baron here. Both are marked by incredible casting. I'd say maybe the most surprising element of this movie was, and again, this is just a Universal Blu-ray release. There are much better releases out there of this. Arrow is one. I know Glenn, our Monday reviewer, this is one of his favorite movies of all time, man. And I knew, again, in light of Star Wars' free fall, I knew I had to jump on board. I knew I needed a replacement for where Star Wars has been and is heading. And this fits, man. This book is so stinking intriguing to me. Eventually I'm going to read it. I know that J.R. Tolkien, refused to review it, just didn't like it. And there's a darkness to it in terms of, the providential hand of things and how humanity, how he lays things out, I guess, was a little maybe too dark for J.R. Tolkien. This is the same guy, of course, who gave us The Lord of the Rings, right? As if there's not dark moments in those. I don't know exactly what it was, but I know he refused to review it. Just didn't like it. And I don't know, here in 2024, nearly 2025, we're getting close to, I'm finding the relevance of this is so intriguing, and the backdrop to it, a lot of what has brought this universe into play from where it came from, is just the world building. Okay, so like I was gonna say, and I'm gonna just head to the closing here. One of the things that surprised me the most was, especially after Roger Ebert's reading his review, was aesthetically just the sets, the landscape, the world building going on. I was quite convinced at the practicalness of how things were laid out in terms of space travel, in terms of just the world of Harkonnen. Just an amazing Again, we're speaking from 1984. Just amazing. Very dark, very, very, very sinister. That the guy who plays the man, that guy is a nut job, man. That guy is just absolutely, he's got some psychological disorders going on to the nth degree. Where the one that's really messed up in the new ones, of course, is the brother to the beast. Just his name slips me. And how Paul's journeys with the Freeman is a lot different in 84. It just feels a lot different. The setup, the role of his mom, it just, some things feel really familiar. Some things do not feel familiar at all in terms of one film and then the latter films, the new films. But let me just end on this, and I apologize. We're 21 minutes in already. If you've never given this a chance, or it just was a failed experiment in some lost, forgotten time, I have to say, you ought to give it another shot. You ought to, like me, you ought to just take another look. It is a world for 1984. It is a world where so many pieces come into play, be it the special effects of the time, the score, the cinematography, David Lynch, which I know he wasn't too fond of the final product. Ultimately, who are highly that creative? Who's ever happy? It is 2 hours, 17 minutes, and it's really in its own way a visual treat, much like the new ones, which is how I came into this world, which I am just beyond intrigued with. So anyways, random, something different, something a little different. Dune, definitely check out the 84. And in a couple weeks, we'll be diving into Dune Part 1, Part 2. A little different for body bags, but you know what? I think I've earned the right to be different. So as always, all my hopes and prayers go to those who are victims of this terrible hurricane. We were, for a moment, in its pathway. Somehow we were spared, and very thankful, but many weren't. And many they're not even anywhere near that point of how do we rebuild. They're just enduring the nightmare of this hurricane. And so all my hopes and prayers with them. Just absolutely terrible. Anyways, we always end these things off with my dogs, who have got a huge game against Alabama Saturday night. Ought to be pretty insane. Hopefully, we'll come on top. As always, we end these things off with,
this is not a dream. Not a dream.
We might be useful to